Every moment you look at the clock is a moment wasted. Everyone in our culture feels this pressure to reach a certain milestone by a certain point. It's just how we've been wired in the West. We are a fast-paced culture. We want it and we want it now. And this is the mindset that bleeds over into every area of our lives. And I'm guilty of it too, I will admit. I'm talking about that voice in your head that says, I have to be married by the time I'm 24, or I have to have this job by 25, or I have to have X amount of net worth by 28. Or if I don't own a house by 30, I'm a failure. Or if I don't have my dream job by then, it'll be too late. All of this happens in their heads. Just slow down for a minute. Now, we all have an internal voice that lies to us. Now, it's good to have goals, dreams, ambitions. It's good to have a plan. Write the vision and make it plain, as Habakkuk 2 says. The problem is that we tend to make the plan and expect that it will happen the way we want it to, or that everything will happen in the time that we set. Even if we don't expect it, that's what we really, really want, if we're honest with ourselves. And then we get to start staring at that clock. We waste minutes, then hours, then weeks of our lives watching that clock tick because we feel like we're not hitting the milestones in life fast enough, that we're not getting things done fast enough, that we're not doing what we want to do with our lives fast enough. But every moment you look at the clock, a moment is wasted. You can't control the passage of time. So stop counting the minutes, stop counting the years. You can't control the passage of time. You often can't control your circumstances. So why not focus on what's within your power to control? Just look at the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Alright, so Joseph is the youngest son of Jacob, the youngest of 11 children, okay? And if you know anything about how the culture worked at that time, the youngest child did not exactly have the most perks coming to him, okay? He didn't have the best advantage in life. Everything went to the firstborn, the inheritances, the blessings, all of that. So already Joseph isn't starting off from the best plan, though he did have his father's favor. He was his father's favorite son. So he had that going for him. Then Joseph, one day he has a dream, and he dreams that he's going to be a man of power and influence, and that he's going to have people respecting and honoring him and bowing to him. And he makes the mistake of telling his family about these dreams that he's having. And his father immediately says, okay, whoa, hold up, and he rebukes him. And his brothers have a bit of a more extreme reaction, to say the least. Their reaction is to let their hate flow through them, and they're going to, and so they grow so hateful of Joseph that they actually plot to kill him, and they throw him into an empty well. They end up selling Joseph into slavery, and Joseph ends up in Egypt as a slave to a man named Potiphar. So already, at the age of 17, Joseph's life is not really going all that well. He just had a dream that he was going to be on top of the world, that he was going to be a man of importance and dignity, and then he is sold into slavery. So not really going all that well. But Joseph stays the course. He continues to honor God in everything he does and in the service to his master. And then he's falsely accused of rape by Potiphar's wife. And so he is put in prison for something he never did, for a crime he didn't commit, one of the worst crimes you can be accused of. So again, not going that well. But again, still, Joseph is not done honoring God in everything he does, even while in prison. Even though his options seem a bit limited and he's not exactly on top of the world, as he thought was God's promise, he still chooses to serve God, and he can uses his talents to interpret dreams of his fellow inmates. And it was years later, while he spent years in prison for a crime he never committed, but it comes to the Pharaoh's ears that Joseph can interpret dreams, and so he does this favor for the Pharaoh. And then the Pharaoh makes him the most powerful man in Egypt overnight. Overnight, Joseph's circumstances completely change. He goes from being in prison, falsely in prison, to being the second most powerful person in Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh. And then after that, it took about 7 to 14 years for Joseph's dream ultimately to come true. He was reconciled with his family, with his brothers, and so his dream that he had at the beginning of the story ultimately came true. So you might say that Joseph became an overnight success after 20 or so years of suffering. Now notice one thing. Joseph wasn't just patient. He was patient, but he didn't just wait for things to happen. Joseph may not have known what was going to happen to him or how and when, but he trusted God the whole way and showed his trust by serving him. Joseph honored God in everything he did, no matter what. When he lived with his family, Joseph honored God. When he was sold into slavery, he continued to honor God in service to his master. When he was falsely accused of rape and thrown into prison, still, Joseph glorified God in everything he did, to the point that even his jailers took a liking to him and entrusted him with authority and privileges. And it was through his honoring of God in that prison that Joseph was eventually brought before the Pharaoh. Now, for most of us, being falsely imprisoned would be more than enough to warrant a pity party to rival all other pity parties. But Joseph's circumstances did not dictate his purpose, which was ultimately to serve God in everything he does and to give God all the glory. That was his purpose. And so Joseph's circumstances did not derail his faithfulness, and it took between 20 to 27 years, but Joseph remained faithful and his dreams became reality. God doesn't work with a microwave. Are you hearing me? Now look, I've been trying to get into ministry for years at this point, but God has continually said, no, you're not ready, and God is good for that. But now if I hurry into ministry according to my own timing instead of God's, it doesn't matter if I look good on the pulpit, or if I can orate, or speak moving words, because if my character is lacking, if my inside is as hard and cold as ice, I can't feed people spiritually, they will spit me out. Let God do his work in you. Don't rely on yourself, don't lean on your own understanding. It's lean on God and let him do his work in you. It's not as fast or convenient as a microwave. But no one pays $50 a plate for a microwave dinner. Quality takes time and care. Some really good stuff comes out of that slow cooker, let me tell you. You just honor God in everything you do, no matter your circumstances, and let him do the cooking. If you are waiting on God's timing, there is a reason for it. While you are waiting, God is working. Keep pressing forward, keep working hard, keep getting better. Keep being faithful and let your character be built in this time of waiting. Stop watching the clock and get back on track. You have things to do in this time. It's not too late to dream. You didn't take too long to pursue your purpose. You're not getting too old. Stop listening to the lies. Okay, don't think that you can limit what God does in your life. Don't do what Moses tried to do, saying, oh God, I can't do what you want me to do because I can't talk very well. Okay, don't think you can limit what God can do in your life or how he can use you. You might have heard it said that God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Now there is truth to that statement. God does qualify the called. He qualifies who he calls. But his timing is the paramount factor. Okay, I have been trying to go into full-time ministry for some time, as I said, but I have received a no at every turn, or at the very least, a not yet. Now, many months ago, I was up for a position at a big church, and after several interviews that I thought went very well as other things that made me sincerely believe that God was calling me in that direction, the church ultimately rejected me for the position. Now, to say that I was dumbfounded and heartily disappointed is barely able to cover it. I was devastated. Now, as it turns out, God was looking out for me, because only months later, it was revealed that that very church was embroiled in heavy scandal. Our place is to put our trust in our faithful God. His is to carry out his plan in his way and when he sees fit. And that doesn't mean that we just sit around doing nothing while we wait. Until I am finally called into full-time ministry, I hope it happens someday. Until such a time, I'll be serving in the mission field that he's currently dropped me in, and I'll be further preparing myself with seminary. If we must wait on God's timing, such waiting should be done faithfully. If you are waiting on God to move in your life, don't wait in a stationary position. Serve him gratefully and faithfully while you wait. You might be amazed at the things that he does while you're wandering in the wilderness.